Lent is upon us, and today in this gospel, Jesus is kind of giving us a take on how we should approach it. You know, because we should do all these things that we're called to do, the praying, the fasting, the almsgiving, all of it. But it has to be done out of love for God. That's the most important thing. You know, if you're fasting and not praying, then you're just dieting. Big deal. You know, you can do that whenever. But it's all tied to God. And so I would say take these 40 days and let the guiding principle of these 40 days be Jesus on the cross. You won't go wrong there. If we keep Jesus on the cross as our primary focus of Lent, you're going to come out of Lent a better person, a more holy person, a more on fire person. And that's what we need to be during the days that we live. So prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, these are the three benchmarks that the Jews placed in high regard. And of course, the church has adopted them as well. But clearly, the greatest of them is charity. And charity could be seen as, you know, the almsgiving charity, maybe, but not really. You can write a check for $10,000 to the church and think, well, I've done my job for Lent. Maybe, but not really. Although, please do write the check. I'm happy to take your money. But it's not so easy. It really has to be from the heart, you know? So what's the difference between charity and just giving money? The difference is you should be invested in it. It should have something of you going into it. It's not just the act of writing the check and letting it go and it's gone and done. No, and I'll tell you a story about how there's a difference. So like probably about 8 years ago when I was living at St. Edward, I was the parochial, the vicar. That was not the pastor. The pastor was a friend of mine. And same routine as here. We had 6 a.m. adoration, which was kind of for me, and then 7 a.m. public adoration. But at some point, somebody would come into the church every morning around 6:10 in the morning, and I'd hear the door, but I wouldn't see them. For like 15 minutes, they would be nobody, and then they would appear. And when it's dark in the morning, it's a little unnerving when you hear someone enter, but you don't see them. It's like, what are they doing? Where are they? So after about 2 weeks of this, I knew who it was because I could see when he finally came in. I went up to this guy and I said, what do you do when you come in here and you disappear? And he goes, I go to the bathroom. I go, why don't you go to the bathroom before you come to the church? And I was a little snippy with him because it just was irritating. I'm like, what is happening here? He goes, well, I live under an overpass, so I like to clean up before I come into the church as respect for God. So, of course, I felt like an idiot. I said, oh, my gosh, I'm so sorry. So then I watched him for like 3 weeks. Very devout, didn't seem to exhibit any signs of mental illness or craziness. And then he would stay for Mass, and then he would go on his way. Well, one day, about a month into this, the Lord says to me during adoration, you have an extra bedroom in your rectory. I said, yes, I do. So what? Why don't you ask him to live with you? I said, are you serious? He's a stranger. Ask him to live with you. I go, I can't do that because I'm not the pastor. Go ask the pastor permission. Well, the pastor was a very fussy priest. I said, there's no way he's going to allow this. But he actually lived in a different building. So as it turns out, he didn't care. He said, yeah, do whatever you want. I said, oh, okay. So later that week, I went up to this gentleman. His name was Ronnie. I said, hey, Ronnie, why don't you move in with me? That way you don't have to live under the bridge, and it'll be easier. And he just couldn't believe it. So Ronnie moves in. And it was a very big adjustment for both of us, because Ronnie was basically living like an animal in the streets. So the first day we sat down for dinner, he ate everything with his hands. I said, wait a minute, what are you doing? You can pick up the fork and use the fork. What are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just habit. I said, okay, well, let's retrain these habits. And it was little things like this. Like in the morning, I said, the only rule is when I go to pray, you have to come with me. And he agreed to that. So I got up one morning, and particular morning, he wasn't ready. I knocked on his door. He comes running out, you know, kind of dazed, and says, okay, I'll be dressed in 2 seconds. And he gets dressed and goes, okay, let's go. And I go, don't you want to wash your face or brush your teeth? Oh, I don't have a toothbrush. Oh, well, let me get you one. It's important. Dental hygiene's important. So I got him a toothbrush. Took him to the dentist. He hadn't been in like 20 years. Remarkably, his teeth were pretty good. And he had no benefits. And it turns out he was disabled and the government owed him money. So he stayed for like 9 months, almost like pregnancy with having a child. And that Christmas, we found him a place that was walkable to the church. He would be self-sustained by his disability benefits. And so that Christmas, I told the parish, do not give me any gifts this year. Buy something for this guy's apartment. And so that Christmas, we had this tree with like 100 gifts around it. And Christmas Eve, I said to him, do you want to open a gift? I got you a gift. It was an amazing time. And he says, yes, which one is mine? I said, all of them. He couldn't believe it. He never had a Christmas. He had a dysfunctional home life. And he cried for about 2 hours. I said, you got to pull yourself together. We're going to Mass. And we went over to Mass, and then we came back, and the next morning he got to open all his gifts, and they were all gifts for a home. And he says, I don't understand. What will I do with these? I says, we got you an apartment. You're going to go move in on your own. You're going to have your own life back. He couldn't believe this. And to this day, he's still doing well. He calls me about every 3 months to check in. But that's true charity, because you're invested. It's, you have to give something from yourself. I'm not saying you should invite homeless people into your homes for Lent, but we can do more than just the average. There was also a girl at St. Edward one day that decided every day she saw a homeless man on the corner as her mom drove her to school, and she said, this morning, Mommy, can you make 2 sandwiches, one for me and one for that man on the corner? And she started, every day she'd drop him a sandwich on her way to school. This is a kindergarten kid. Little things, the retirement homes are filled with people who have no visitors, ever. Their families have basically abandoned them. It would be a great thing to maybe once a week visit a retirement home and ask the front desk, who gets no visitors? We'd like to visit them. And go and bring them some cookies or some balloons or something to cheer their day. The list is really endless. Let God lead you, but try to build into your Lent something that will actually transform somebody else's life in a positive way. Because the saying, charity covers a multitude of sins, it's really true. That time that Ronnie lived with me was the most grace time I've ever had with regard to having no temptations whatsoever for 9 months. I mean, I lived like I was walking on clouds in heaven, because God just kept blessing it and blessing it and blessing it. So take this Lent to do something different and to transform the world into God's kingdom.